Buyers are back. Look at that up-down volume ratio and also the daily advance decline. New all-time closing high for the Dow and also for the NYSE composite. And a new all-time high for the New York Stock Exchange composite. And all the indexes ended the week in the green. So market do not care what we believe, especially those that are calling for gloom and doom. Certainly that day of reckoning will come. In this week's S&P 500 analysis, we will see if that day is near. Stay tuned. For the S&P 500 on a monthly basis here, it is still up by 4.63%. And on the week, the S&P 500 is up 1.68% or almost 99 points for the week. And here on a daily basis, you can see that the S&P 500 is still holding this higher low, higher high uptrend, and it is moving away from an ascending 30-day moving average. It filled this gap, so right now it looks like it could be heading up to this high here. But we'll see. Later on, we'll take a look at the market internal and also the price action and along with the expected range for the coming week to see where the market is pricing in for the S&P 500 to go. And looking at the Dow Jones Industrial, the Dow Jones Industrial for the month to date, it is up 6%, and the week to date is almost 2%, and it was up 851 points for the week. And here we see the New York Stock Exchange Composite. The New York Stock Exchange Composite is up 4.6% month to date and almost 19.5% year to date. And on a weekly basis, it's up 2.43% or 477 points. And you notice that it also made a new all-time high along with closing at a new all-time closing high. And here on the NASDAQ 100, we see the NASDAQ 100 is also holding this higher high, higher low uptrend, and it is above this 30-day moving average. And it's coming up to fill this gap here. So wouldn't be surprised to see this price move up and fill this gap and put the all-time high in play. Now, for the month to date, the NASDAQ 100 is up 4.45%. In a week, it was up 1.87% or 382 points. And looking at this chart of the indexes, we see all the indexes are up for the week, and they are all above this 30-day moving average. And we see last week, the Russell 2000 is actually the top performer with a gain of 4.46% or almost 103 points, followed by the New York Stock Exchange Composite, then the Dow Jones Industrial and the NASDAQ 100, NASDAQ Composite, S&P 500, and the Dow Jones Transportation. Looking at this sentiment chart here, we notice that the market participants are not fearful and they are completely resigned. We see that the VIX is sitting at 15.24 as of Friday's close, and the put-call ratio is down at 0.6. And looking at the up-down volume ratio for the NYSE, we see that the entire week was positive. And also on the daily advance decline, the last 2 days, we saw a broad market participation on the upside. And for the new high, new low in the NYSE, we also saw the number of stock making new 52-week high is coming back up, while the number of stock making new 52-week low is going back down. So right now, we are still seeing a strong positive 52-week high versus 52-week low. And here we see the cumulative AD line from the New York Stock Exchange is also coming back up, and the S&P 500 is moving toward its all-time closing high. So we will not be surprised to see this cumulative AD line to make a new high in the coming week. And for the NASDAQ, we also noticed that the entire week, the up-down volume ratio was also positive. And again, similar to the NYSE, the last 2 days, it had broad market participation on the upside based on the daily advance decline. And the NASDAQ new high, new low is also showing more stock are making new 52-week high than 52-week low. And the important thing is the number of stock making new 52-week low is coming down, while the number of stock making new 52-week high is going up. And for the NASDAQ cumulative AD line, we do expect it to remain with this huge negative divergence. But the key thing is it is coming up along with the index on a short-term basis. So that is a positive. So overall, we see the internal starting to turn back with some strength now, and also the market participant remain to be fearless and also risk on. Now let's take a look at the 11th sector in the S&P 500 first with the XLK, the technology sector. We see that it is pushing back up toward a high now. And the discretionary, the consumer discretionary is actually making a new high here, and also the communications. And the retailer is pushing up as well towards the industrial. And the energy sector is coming up to its recent high. And we see the consumer stable is also pushing higher as well. Now, the healthcare is showing a little bit of a weakness. It is below its 30-day moving average here. And the utility is coming up toward its high. Similarly, the real estate sector, and look at the financial is hitting a new high. And that's the S&P is trying to come up to its recent high here. So all in all, a lot of the sector is showing strength, except for the healthcare. Looking at some of the major sector here, we see the semiconductor is starting to come back now. And we also notice the oil, the USO, it's also holding steady somewhere around this 74 level. And look at the Explorer is actually making a move up. And then we also look at the retailers. The retailer is also pushing higher. Now the biotech is still trying to recover, so it's still showing a little bit of a weakness there. And the miner is also pushing higher with the recent gold price moving back up. And also looking at the banking sector, the banks and the regional bank is also pushing up higher as well. And the home builder is also moving up. Now the TLT, the long-term bond, is still under a little bit of a pressure, and it is still kind of moving down a bit, although it is putting in a higher low. So maybe it will turn around soon. Who knows? We'll just have to keep an eye on it. Now let's take a look at the price action, starting with the E-mini S&P 500 volume profile chart. As you can see right now, the price came back into this area here. You see that it is filling out this distribution as it was balancing here for a few days before it pushes back up into this balance area. So we're basically looking at the price to try to come back in to balance in this area and then possibly come up and put in a new all-time high. And looking at the market profile chart for the ES, we see that it was balancing here. Now it did leave a lot of these single prints here that need to be repaired eventually. But right now it appears that it might want to come up here and take out this poor high. And once this poor high is get taken out, then most likely we'll see this all-time high be taken out. And remind you that there is a Globex all-time high that is still need to be validated. So definitely that is telling us that the ES or the S&P 500 is looking for a new all-time high. It's just that we don't know when that will occur, but the market is telling us to expect that possibility. And looking at the daily candlestick chart for the ES, you see that it closed right at the upper range of the weekly expected move. Now, I did get a bounce off of this high volume node here. Remember, we're sitting at this high volume zone, right? This distribution. So it came up, and now it is, inside of this balance area. And if we look at the volume profile itself, we could see that it is try to come up into this area here. So next week, if we stay above this level, this 5962 area, then we could see that the possibility of the auction to come up to this all-time high and possibly take out the Globex all-time high. Now, if it unable to hold this level and it dip below, then we could see this thing come back down to this high volume node here, somewhere around 58.94.50, and possibly work itself down into this 5807.25 and basically fill this lower gap. And if we take a look at the what the market is pricing in for the coming week, you can see that it is actually pricing in on the upper range at this near the all-time high. As a matter of fact, it is up at the all-time high and possibly take out the Globex all-time high. So the upper range is between 6052.50 and 6046. And the low range is 5936 and 5905. So you can see that on the upper range is the all-time high, but if it come down, then most likely it probably will chop around here and try to build this up, basically build some volume here and expand this distribution area into a one huge balance area. And looking at the SPY, you see the SPY, it held this high volume node here and pushed back up into this balance area. So right now we see that it closed right near this upper range of the weekly expected move, right inside of the range here for this week. And right now we basically are looking for the possibility for the price to continue to push higher and into this all-time high in the coming week. So as long as it could hold above this 591.93, then we're basically looking for a push higher. But if it is unable to hold this level and dip below it, then we'd be looking at this high volume node at 582.40 to get tested and possibly come down and try to fill this gap here at this 578.30 area. And if we look at what the market is pricing in for the coming week, you can see that the market is actually pricing a new all-time high. The upper range is between 602.80 and 601.20, and the lower range is 589.80 and 587.50. Looking at the NQ, the E-mini Nasdaq 100 future, you see that it is trying to come up to this edge here at this 20,951. So if it could come up and fill this gap next week, then we can see this work toward the all-time high. Now, if it is unable to do that and it resort back down, then we'd be watching this 20,405. So, and see would it be able to hold this level. And if it doesn't, then we are looking for a continuation to move down toward this 19,948 or near the 20,000 mark. Looking at the QQQ, we see the Q came up almost come up to this upper range of the expected move. Now, it did not fill the gap this week, so we probably be looking for the potential gap fill in the coming week. Now, the other thing is we want to keep an eye on this level here at 496.52. This is the high volume node here. So if it comes down and is unable to hold this level and bounce back up, then we could be watching a gap fill down here. So let's go and take a look at what the market is actually trying to price in for the coming week. And here we see that the market is pricing in less than the all-time high on the upper range. It is pricing in between 514.30 and 512.70. And on the lower range is pricing in 498.8 and 496. So for the coming week, we'll be watching to see what it be able to get above this, fill the gap, and then push up into the upper range and possibly put the all-time high in play. And if it doesn't, say it get rejected and pushes back down, then we most likely will come down to this lower range and see what it get a bounce off of this high volume node. And if it doesn't, then we'd be looking for a continuation to come down to this 489.38. Now let's take a look at Bitcoin here before we take a look at some of the trade idea, including a couple of these crypto mining stock that I will go over for you to give you some idea on some possible, trade possibility. And looking at the Bitcoin, you see Bitcoin this week got almost to 100,000. It didn't get there. It got up to 99,860. And you can see right now it's sitting at this high volume area here. So we'll be watching to see what it be able to push above this, the 99,860 and get above that 100,000 mark. And if it doesn't, and if it start coming back down, pay attention to this low volume node here. Somewhere around this 95,606 area. So we'll pay attention to that and see what it get it bounce back up. And if it doesn't, then we'd be a possibility of looking at Bitcoin coming back down to around this 85,000 level. But of course, there are a couple of these high volume nodes in between That's somewhere around 91,300 and 89,600 area that could provide some potential support there. So those are the level to watch. Obviously, everybody have their eye on that 100,000 mark. And then if it's on a retracement, then we'd be looking at that 95,600 and possibly 91,000 and 89,000 on a pullback. Then if it, we see a dramatic pullback, then we could see 85,000 ultimately on a huge pullback. Let's take a look at gold's price action. Recently, we saw gold put in a shooting star on this weekly chart here. Then it pulled back, and right now seems to be bouncing back up. And if we look at it on a daily basis, you see gold on Friday actually closed up above this 30-day moving average here. And right now it seems to be getting on the top of this low volume edge. So right now we're basically watching to see would it pull back. I think if it pulls back, then come back up, and that will present a possible trade location to be considered for a long trade. And if we take a look at the intraday on an hourly basis chart, we could see a little bit more detail on that, the entry level. Here on this hourly chart here, this is the level that we want to pay attention to, somewhere around 27.10, 27.12. Notice it came up to this low volume edge, this low volume no. And the tendency for auction is that it could come back down and retrace down to this balance area, or it will come up and retrace up to this balance area. So this is the location we want to look for, a possible trade location. Now, we don't want to go and just do a FOMO thing and chase it up. So if it breaks, let's say, for example, next week, if it breaks above it, so we probably will likely see a little bit of a pullback after initial break. Then we will look for this bounce off this pullback for potential entry to play it up and swing it up to this high volume no here and possibly get up to this 2770 area here, 75. Okay, now if it, for example, if it come down, and then what we want to see, would it be able to find support somewhere around this area, and it bounces back up and then break this low volume no and then break above, and that's where we want to take the entry next time on a breakout. Okay, so that's how we're going to play this gold here. And if we look at this intraday chart here with the volume profile, you see that we're seeing this one-time framing up, right? The low of these each individual session is making a higher low. So we are basically looking at this one-time framing up, and eventually we are going to see a little bit of a retracement and break this one-time framing up. Then we look for a bounce back up to start another one-time framing up, and that's where we want to go and look for the trade location for a swing long. And similarly, we could look at this IAU, this ETF for gold here. We're basically looking at a similar type of a price action on this weekly chart here. And likewise for the daily chart, again, we're basically looking for a break above this pivot here. And if it could go up, then we'll be looking at the possibility of moving up and possibly get up to the high here. Or if move down, then we look for a bounce back and then play the breakout of this pivot. So you can see on this hourly chart here, similar type of concept for the gold future. We're basically looking for maybe possibly a pullback on this high volume no and then get a push back up. Then we look for a trade location on a breakout, at this level here. Or we basically look for a break, come up to this and then pull back and get a little bit of back test bounce. Then we look for a trade location on that back test bounce. And here you can see on this volume profile chart also, you see this one-time framing up, right, with a successive higher low on each session. So that's what we call one-time framing up. Another stock that you might want to keep an eye on is Apple here. Looking at the weekly chart on the Apple, you see that it's been pretty much kind of balancing within this sideways action here other than this particular week. So keep an eye on that. And if we go and take a look at the daily, and on this daily chart here, you can see that it's been kind of, moving up here. And right now it is near the top of this distribution. So what we're going to be watching to see would it be able to break out of this top of this distribution and move up into this area here, then we'd be looking at this high to be in play. So that's what we're basically looking at for Apple in the coming week, is to see would it be able to break out, look for a bounce from this breakout and move up to the high. And from this hourly chart, you can see that, you see there's a series of higher low, and right now, top of this distribution. Okay, so if it come up, maybe break out and move up, then we are looking at this particular high. Right, let's take a look at a couple of these crypto mining company. First is the Hive Digital. You see right now it's from the prior week, it popped up here to almost 6, and then it sold off. And right now it is back inside of this high volume zone here, this distribution. So we're going to be watching for the coming week to see would it be able to break out of this zone and possibly try to make a play on this high once again. From this daily chart here, you see right now it is basically trying to come up. So if it continue to move up, break this little bit of a top edge here, this top edge, then look for a move up to this low volume edge here, and that's the idea. But if it comes back down and dip below this moving average cloud, then we could see this thing to retrace back at least down to this low here, somewhere around the 350 mark. And from this hourly chart, we can see a little bit more clear on the volume profile. Here's the edge here. So if it breaks above this edge, then we got this low volume area, then it most likely will try to auction up into this high volume area near this 550. But if it unable to stay above this edge here, let's say it retrace back, then we'd be looking at this high volume node here, somewhere around this $4 level, and possibly retrace back down into this low volume edge. This basically what we call it a composite value area low. If we look at this as a value area, and that would be somewhere around this 330, 325 area. And here looking at this intraday chart here with the volume profile, you see that it is kind of balancing here for the last 3-4 days, and just breaking out on Friday, from this balance area and making a move at this edge here. So if it get above this edge, this is the area that we will see the price accelerate up into this area here. The other crypto mining stock that I'm watching here is Hive Digital. See that also it is came up to this edge here, and now it's retracing back down. So it's just a matter of the would it be able to bounce back up and come up to this top edge, or will it continue to retrace down into this 2-ish area here on this weekly chart? And if we look at this daily chart here, you see right now it is in this area here, right? This area. So right now we want to see it to come back up and try to break this 450 area and move up into this 5-ish area up at this high. Now, if it is unable to do that, and we could see it continue to come down and possibly even break this 30-day moving average or 30-week moving average here and come down into this high volume area near the 307. And from this hourly chart here, you can see that sitting right here right now, right, sitting right at this near this low volume zone. So basically looking for this thing to see would it be able to auction back up into this here and break it and then move up. Now, if it doesn't, and if it continue to come down and get below this area here, then there's a good possibility that it will auction down into this high volume area here, this high volume node. And on this volume profile chart here with the session volume profile, we see that it is actually one-time framing down. Right? You see the low from each successive session is lower than the previous session. So we need to see a one-time framing up, break this one-time framing low, okay, one-time framing down by putting a higher low. So we have to keep an eye on that to make sure that we see a higher low to break this one-time framing down pattern and start a one-time framing up. Then we could go after, this node here, right? And we could looking at this node and possibly action back up here, okay, and then come up to this area. So those are the few trade ideas that I have for you this week. Be sure to smash the thumbs up to give it a like, and if you are new to this channel, click on the subscribe to help support this channel. Thank you for watching and good luck on your trading.